When I say money is, what are the first thoughts that come to your mind? That's a big question for a lot of people, if not all of us that participate in the value exchange called money. I ask this because I just got done meeting with a new friend who ironically has the same birthday as me, but is also in a career transition as well. We've been seeing each other around at events and even in the same neighborhood, so I knew eventually that we would have our moment to connect. Turns out we were in Phoenix around the same time between 2014 and 2017. And so I'm so glad that I finally found someone who I can lament with about the lack of Mexican options, specifically burritos in Montreal. But beyond burritos, what they also shared is that they have also found themselves on a spiritual path. And so somehow we got on the topic of finances, probably given the fact that they just moved back to Montreal and I just moved here. And so we're both navigating the in-between worlds of borderlines and nations. And I'm sure it's brought up a lot of questions around finances for the both of us, especially with the idea of currency exchange and this middleman called Uncle Sam, or for the Canadians that I recently learned, Johnny Canuck, also known as capitalism. So I shared with them that I'm attempting to work through a book called Make Money Easy by Lewis Howes and offered and hoped that she could join me along for the journey. Given the fact that I realized that I work best with a little bit of peer pressure and accountability, and that this will probably be the best way for me to finally get through this book. Speaking of accountability buddies, I have an offer called the Side Quest Sidekick, where we strategize short, focused sprints for your goals, starting at 1 week and up to 30 days, 45 days, or 60 days, where I get to be your sidekick who shows up, checks in, and doesn't let you ghost your goals. And there's a financial consequence if you don't follow through. Yes, this is on purpose. So if you're wanting to build a habit, a routine, launch and or finish a project, apply for jobs or grants, have the hard conversation with a friend, family member, coworker, boss, break a habit, or any other side quest that you can think of, and you're ready to get shit done with peer and financial pressure, then I'd love to be your sidekick. Go ahead and check out my Stan store in the link below for more info. So as I was saying, and to be completely honest, is something that I've been side-eyeing and secretly avoiding, which is weird because I worked really hard to get this book. I requested at the library, waited for my turn for so many weeks, and while I was waiting, I even went so far as to get the audiobook. And now that I have it, I've only gotten to chapter 2 on my own. So yeah, I think an accountability buddy will work, especially with someone who's willing and ready to take on the side quest of our money mindset. Because let's be honest, most people don't. And there's no shame in that. It's a very recent phenomenon, especially if you're a person of color, especially if you're a woman. For instance, Black folks didn't start establishing their own banks until the years 1888 and 1930, according to blackenterprise.com, article called Banking on Self-Reliance, A History of Black Banks from 1888 to 1930. That's less than 150 years ago, and only a handful of generations. And as for women, we couldn't even open up a bank account until the 1960s, let alone apply for a credit card until 1974, which is about 66 years for the bank account and 52 years for the credit card. So that's maybe your grandma, your lala, your nana, and let's be honest, maybe even your mom, as my mom is in her mid-70s. And let's be real, straight white guys have been doing this, meaning finances, financial literacy, creating and moving money, and unfortunately, gatekeeping it all since the 16th century, which is the years 1501 to 1600. So that's what I've been trying to tell y'all. Not even our grandmas had a bank account. I don't know about you, but my Lola just turned 96 on March 17th and is barely getting her first blonde-haired, blue-eyed baby. If you're Filipino, you know you know. So as I shared with y'all in a couple videos ago that I had $50,000 in student loan debt. And when it comes to my finances and particularly paying for this investment, I know that it's something that I have to tackle head on. And don't get me wrong, I've been trying, but then unfortunately falling back because of a lack of accountability. To be honest, I was sitting here and I can't even say like, oh, because of a lack of resources or accessibility or support or role models or no one in my family has done this or. And I just sat here, I was like, no, that's not true. I have every resource available to me. It's just me putting the time and effort to actually educating myself about financial literacy and learning how to be a better steward of my money and resources. So yeah, for me, it's accountability. But beyond all that, during the times that I was putting time and effort into learning more about money, and wanting to make the necessary changes in my life, I've come to observe and understand that the core commonality of every area of our lives is our spiritual well being. And that's the question that came up in today's first Money Monday with this new friend. Because I noticed that as they were sharing their current money mindset, along with their relationships and career, I noticed that they were compartmentalizing or dividing it into categories. And then I noticed that they just shared with me how they feel like that they have to divide themselves in a way that's more palatable or digestible for others. And in that moment, I remembered when I would only show parts of myself in certain rooms, spaces, and with certain people. And when I shared only parts of myself, such as acting more queer at Pride, or more mask with the boys, or more femme with the girls, more brown with the BIPOC, or more white at work, I remembered how exhausting that was and that I didn't want to do it any longer. And so that's when I began the process of deconditioning myself for the past few years. And where did I learn that? Probably from my immigrant Filipino parents, probably from the experience of just being first gen, probably just learning how to adapt and chameleonize yourself to each room. But like I said, that was exhausting. And a part of that process, I'm learning that each section, category, area of our lives are actually more connected than we think they are. I say this because they were sharing with me their current thoughts about money, but also how they view romantic relationships. They shared that they were poly, and even though I'm still learning about that kind of relational structure, it seems like in the conversations I've had with people who are, is that their perspective is that there's enough love to go around. And why limit ourselves to just one kind of love or to just one person? Which is totally valid and fair. I mean, I shared with you all in a few videos ago about how I didn't like the pressure of just choosing one of anything. So I'm sure that this is a possibility for those who are in polyamorous relationships. And so then I asked them, what if you viewed money the same way as you viewed romantic relationships? What if there was enough to go around and you didn't have to just limit yourself to one source of income? And so then I asked the question, what if it's all connected? What if you treated your finances the same way that you treated someone that you just started dating? What do you typically do? Maybe take them out on dates, especially if it's a new connection, maybe once a week. Get to know them, share your situations, your perspectives, your beliefs, your values, and probably get support and advice from others, ideally from those who are successfully dating or in a relationship or in a marriage. So just like you take this person on a date, what if we took ourselves on a date to get to know our finances? Just the same way we would share our current situations with this new person, what if we shared our current financial situations with our budget and our bank accounts? And again, just the same way we'd get support and advice from others who are in places that we'd like to be, what does that look like in doing the same when it comes to our finances? Whether it be a financial advisor, consultant, or even starting off with different resources and support and advice from YouTube videos. And something to just note about who we get support and advice from. For example, you wouldn't necessarily ask someone what it takes to be in a successful marriage from someone who recently got a divorce. And maybe that's the same with money. You wouldn't necessarily ask advice from someone who's broke. And look, I'm gonna call myself out here. As of April 2026, I can't necessarily give you financial sound advice given my current situation. Because from the outside looking in, I can seem broke from this piece of paper standpoint, but I am rich in other areas of my life, such as being physically rich in my body and my immune system, as are working perfectly all together. I'm also mentally rich, despite my first Montreal winter and coming from the desert. I persevered through it with a positive attitude. And like what we discussed in a previous video, your attitude determines your altitude. I'm also rich in environment. Given that spring is finally here, my home and office is clean, organized, and clutter-free. I'm also rich in personal growth. Given that I'm growing and stretching my comfort zone in this new country, in this new relationship, and in the pursuit of this new career. But I'm also rich in service and contribution. In the past couple years, since I haven't had a traditional job and consistent income, I have finally learned how to ask for help and receive support. And so that allows me to now be in a season of giving. Maybe not money-wise yet, but I'm able to give my time, my energy, my effort, and my creation. For example, the two people I met up with these past couple weeks, I'm not charging them, even though I know that the work I'm doing with them is worth it. I'm at a point I'm able to contribute, serve, and mentor others, but still recognizing that my presence has a price. Because even though it's not a financial exchange, but it's like what we've been talking about, it's a synergistic energy exchange. And so because I vibe with them and I believe in them, I'm willing to put my time, energy, and effort into the investment of our relationship. And even right now, making these videos takes up a lot of time. It's truly a full-time job. And I'm pouring my mind, my heart, my body, and soul into each video. All the work that I've done, not only in the past 8 years, but my whole life. Every obstacle I've overcome, every lesson I've learned, based off of every given identity, sectioned off one at a time and as a whole, all at once. Me standing here right now in front of you is my evidence and proof that I've made it, that I'm successful, and that I have the credentials and expertise that is called my life and lived experience. And so I'm here, putting in the time, putting in the energy, putting in the physical, mental, and creative effort, synergizing and synthesizing it so that it makes sense, posting it on this thing called the internet as a signpost, if you will, saying, hey, here's a potential shortcut. You don't have to find the resources. You don't have to put in the time. You don't have to put in the time to reading, comprehending, and even reflecting on the content. You don't have to put in the mental energy or the creative effort to understand it and to make sense of it all. I've done that work, so you don't have to. And so whether I'm showing up on video or in person, and you're still here watching this video and in my presence, my intent is to contribute to your growth. So here's this gift in video form to support you in your journey. And that's the same for these last 2 interactions, because of witnessing them and where they're currently at, I've been there. I've done that, compartmentalizing my identities and compartmentalizing my life. But now, based on my studies, observations, reflections, and practices, I do believe that it's all connected. And I do believe that we're all connected. And what if we treat it as such? So yeah, even though the fruits of my labor isn't showing up as this just yet, but I know the fruits of my labor were showing up in this conversation because I can see the breakthrough that was happening in their eyes and in their mind because of the internal groundwork that I've done. And so, if life is all connected, the big question is, where does it start? If our finances are connected to our relationships, if our relationships are connected to our fitness, if our fitness is connected to our mental health, if our mental health is connected to our environment, if our environment is connected to our growth, if our growth is connected to our well-being, and the list goes on, then where does it all start? Well, I believe it all starts right here. Here in mind, here in body, and here in spirit, as one and as a whole. Not compartmentalized, not categorized, not divided, not sectioned, and not separated. That's what they want us to believe. They want us to believe that we're disconnected. They want us to believe that we're divided. They want us to believe that we're different. They want us to be separated, not only from ourselves, but from each other. Why do you think I'm so passionate about this thing? Why do you think I keep calling this thing out? Because I believe it's the one thing that if we can get back in control of it, and we can get back in control of our lives, our livelihoods, the life in our hoods, and our well-being as a whole and as one. So if you're wondering and you're asking, who do I look to for guidance? I think a more important question to ask is not only who, but what. So first, by looking at their fruit, and not just the fruit of their labor and what they do, but in how they think, that internal operating system, that iOS, and how they communicate verbally, non-verbally, and in their creative expression. And more importantly, the culmination of that and how all of that makes you feel. Look, I'm going to stand here right now. I fully recognize that sometimes what I talk about and how I deliver it can be uncomfortable. For sure. For sure. And I say that recognizing that there's a lot of people out there who are saying the exact same thing in their own way, in their cadence and in their tone and in the fluctuation of their voice and in the way that they express themselves. And they probably give it to you a lot more softly, a lot more gently, making sure that you don't feel any of those uncomfortable feelings, making sure that it's just all positive, making sure that you don't get lost in your shame and guilt and things, making sure that they don't hurt your feelings, that they're not calling you out too hard, but they're calling you in. I get it. I get it. Trust me, I get it. I get it because I'm sensitive too. But again, I'm here to be who I wish I had when I was younger. And to be honest, I wish someone would just call it like it is. I wish someone would have just helped me see what I couldn't see, that they shared with me from the outside looking in, that they shared with me what they've learned and have given me the shortcut so I don't have to go through it too. I can't remember how many times, my mom would say, go ask your teachers, go ask your teachers. And then don't get me wrong, every time I would ask someone for guidance and support, especially those in a teacher role, bless their hearts, a lot of times it's about really just like guiding the person to their own answers, which I also agree with. But I know how many times I was frustrated where I would just say, just give me the answer. Just tell me the truth. What am I looking forward to? What should I be preparing for? What do I have to know? Just give it to me straight. Just give it to me messy. Just tell me like it is. And honestly, just call me out. Call me out on my own bullshit. Hold me accountable. Say something even if it hurts my feelings. I'll get over it. I've had my feelings hurt all the time. And it fucking sucks. It sucks. It's so uncomfortable. And I say this as someone who potentially has ADHD. There's this term called RSD, and it stands for rejection sensitivity dysphoria. Let me just make sure I know I'm guessing that right. RSD, ADHD meaning. Yeah. RSD stands for rejection sensitivity dysphoria, which is a condition often associated with ADHD. It involves experiencing intense emotional pain in response to perceived rejection or criticism, making it difficult for individuals to manage their emotions effectively. So I say this as someone who is very sensitive. Even though not diagnosed, I can remember moments and things that I've done impulsively because I felt rejected, how many relationships I severed because I didn't know how to have the hard conversation. But again, I wish someone, and I remember asking like, gosh, I just wish someone would just call me out and hold me accountable. Yes, in a loving and graceful way, but at some point, and maybe at first trying to come from a softer approach, probably when I was younger. But as I've gotten older and just this continued cycle of frustration in certain areas of my life, damn, I just wish someone would have just said it straight to my face and say like, hey, I'm saying this to you because I've told you in this way. I've told you in that way. We tried this approach. We tried that approach, and you're still not getting it. And so I'm still telling you this in a loving way with as much grace as possible. But it's you. You're the reason. You're the reason this keeps happening. You're the reason why this cycle keeps going. You're the reason why this pattern is still here. You're the reason why this habit isn't budging. And yeah, that fucking hurts at first. But eventually I get over the sensitivity of that rejection, recognizing it's not a direct attack against me, and now getting to take into consideration that my brain is probably saying all kinds of stories about it. And then eventually I'll get a moment to calm down and say, you know what? Probably what they're saying is true. What they're saying is valid. Given the behaviors, the patterns, the habits, the evidence, I can definitely take this into consideration. And so that's all I'm saying here. It's just to take it into consideration. Take into consideration that when you're looking for someone for guidance, yes, look at their fruit, but not just in their labor, not just in what they do. Look at their fruit in the way that they think and what they communicate, and get a pulse check and see how it makes you feel. If you realize that you're on the sensitivity scale like me, and you don't want to learn or be guided by someone who's a little bit more direct and assertive, then don't do that. But then that's not your person, and that's okay. There are people on the other side, because again, I believe that we're all one, but I believe there's people all along this who are willing and ready to share it with you in a way that works for you and where you're at in this moment. But what I'm asking you to consider is to be honest. Is to be honest in that humans can get caught up in a whole lot of doing, in a whole lot of labor, in a whole lot of external work. But humans who can get caught up in doing, but not in a whole lot of being. So just practice your discernment and don't pay as much attention to the human and what they're doing, because it can be a distraction. It can be a facade. It can be an illusion. Can you imagine like the cartoons when they're like running around in circles and circles and circles and they're like kicking up all this dust? You know, the cartoons that are just kicking up all this dust and like creating an illusion and a mirage so you can't really see them. And so there's a whole lot of doing, a lot of movement. It looks like they're doing something. It can be a distraction from what they're afraid of feeling and who they are when they're just being. So like I said, I'm not saying that the doing isn't important, because what we do is a reflection of how we think, and actions is a way that we communicate, as it can speak louder than words, depending on your love language. But when someone is caught up in the distraction of doing, take pulse, take into account, take note of asking yourself, how do I feel in their presence when they're just being? Like when you're just hanging out, or when you're just getting to know each other, or you're having a meal, or you're connecting over Zoom. Do they feel anxious? Do they feel exhausted? Do they feel energized? Do they feel excited? Do they feel lost? Do they feel distracted? How do you feel in their presence? And again, asking yourself and observing, are they only showing and sharing parts of themselves? Which, depending on the situation and the circumstances, is okay, as sometimes every situation asks for a different part of ourselves or a different version of ourselves. Or are they showing up as their full and whole selves? Again, with the same lens. Might be a different situation, might be a different circumstance. But you're a smart human being. You know when someone is only showing you parts of themselves, or they're not being fully honest or open or transparent. You know that feeling. And so again, practice discernment, not only in all things, but in choosing who your guides, your mentors, and your role models are. And recognizing again, and more importantly, that if we're all connected and we're just a reflection of each other, then the even bigger question to ask is, how am I showing up? Am I showing up as a separated and divided self? Or am I showing up as my full and whole self? And so that's my question for you. When you're out and about in the world, in person or online, do you find yourself showing up in a compartmentalized, separated self? Or are you showing up as your full and whole self? I'd love to hear it in the comments below, and what you're doing in practice to show up as presently as possible, and how people feel in your presence. Because again, like I shared in the last video, the quote that my partner shared with me by Maya Angelou, people will forget what you say, and people will forget what you do, but people won't forget how you made them feel. So speaking of all this, in my next video, I'm gonna show up as my whole self. And I say this because the preparation of this video has taken me hours. And let's not even talk about the recording and the post-production. So if you're watching this right now, I'm about 5 to 6 hours in the creation process. And that's all without the help of AI. And so these are my own words. And since we're at the end of this video, I'm sure I've been talking for about an hour now. And so then editing it for your attention span and removing the ums, the ers, and the fillers as to not waste your time, consider this as a gift to you. But also, we still have at least 82 videos to go in this 100-day challenge. And this current creation process is not sustainable. So in this next video, I'm going to test, experiment, and practice what I preach. And I'm going to show up as my full self, with the ums, the ers, and the no edits, and this post-it note of random bullet points to be my guide. So it's not going to be pretty, and it's not going to be polished. But I'm not looking for that in my people. I'm looking for proactivity and presence. So if I'm looking for that in others, and as a role model to my younger self, I'd like to model it for myself. So if you're cool with the I'm pretty and the imperfect, then I'll see you in the next video. And for those who don't, thank you so much for your time and attention so far. And I look forward to reconnecting with you again when I teach and or delegate the task of editing to a proactive person. And speaking of that, if you are watching this, I am almost always open to having an intern or interns. So if you want to learn how I do things and or help and collaborate with the building process of the Creator Leadership Academy, then reach out to me on Instagram at IamKShort. Until then, I'll see you in the next imperfect and unpolished video. Bye now.